What up, guys? So today's video is an idea for any of you guys that are in the first couple of years of your training and you struggle with defense, you struggle with escaping, side control, bottom of mount, anything like that. It comes from my experience, and it's basically, it's a white belt lesson that I think we all get that I didn't really grasp or understand until I was a brown belt. So here's the idea with you. When I was a brown belt, I finally understood the idea or the power of frames and patience from positions like the bottom of side, bottom of mount. What happened was at the time, somewhere thereabouts in my brown belt, I was in a situation where my knee was injured. Now, it wasn't injured enough to take me off the mats, but it was injured enough where I had to adjust my training because it hurt, and I couldn't just drive off my knees. And I was in my early 20s, and like many of you, if you're training when you're in your early 20s, the last thing you want to do is stop training. So I had to adjust. Lesson there about, changing things up a little bit with your jiu-jitsu from time to time, depending on an injury. But what I did was I laid on my back. I couldn't drive off my legs. I couldn't do a whole lot of cutting or angles or anything. So I just laid on my back flat, and I would bring my arms in like this and keep them together basically in framing positions. And my goal was to simply see how long I could slow down the submissions. I wasn't even worried about escaping. I'm like, I'm just going to look up at the clock. Let's see if I can slow down the submissions. Let's see how long I can last. Because that was about all I could do. I could lay down and, use my arms like this. Did this for about 3 weeks. What was interesting is that I noticed that with the black belts who had the ability to submit me, when I focused on putting my frames together and staying patient, right, and staying relaxed and not even worrying about escaping, just trying to focus on keeping my arms together and out of danger, I lasted a lot longer from those positions. Imagine that, right? Because when you think about arm submissions as an example, typically it's when they separate the arm, right? Like they're separating your arm away from your body and then they attack it. This is why, I'll tell people, your arms are like buddies, in a back alleyway. They have a better chance of fighting you when they're together. When they get separated, bad stuff happens. And so, starting this off, I'm slowing down the submissions. They're still getting me, but I'm slowing them down. But after about 3 weeks of this, where I'm just doing this stuff, fighting, doing my patented iron squirrel here, all this stuff, by the end of it, a lot of the several black belts that were training at the gym at the time that were still around, they were having a hell of a lot of trouble submitting me. I was like, it's pretty cool. When I got back to training regularly, when my knee was no longer injured and I was 100% full Chewy going to roll, I remember when I would find myself getting into a bad spot, like the bottom of side, bottom of mount, whatever it is, I noticed how much more relaxed I was, which was new. This isn't something that I was good at. I never really dove into escapes back then. Very much was offensively had an offensive mindset. I want to attack. So I didn't really like to work on my defense as much, especially from those positions. And so all of a sudden I noticed that I'm going for things, and I noticed a huge change in my ability to be offensive because, at least for me back then, when I would be going for a submission from top where it involved me to, sit back for an armbar or something like that, or when I was going for a sweep or something from my back, there was always this lingering, what if? What if they pass and you get smashed afterwards? And once I realized that if they passed my guard and got on top of me, it didn't matter because I had really good defense at this point and I could survive, then it changed from what if to so what? And that made my ability to be offensive and aggressive way better. And then I noticed that when they would get to the bottom of side, my escapes got so much better because I was becoming more patient. Because, I don't know about you guys. I'm explaining this through my situation, so maybe it resonates with some of you. Back then, even to that point, when I was a brown belt, when I was going up with some of the black belts, when they would get to side control, I would start panicking. It was like this, I was in a situation where it was this panic mode because I was just sure they were going to catch me in a submission. And I just wanted to get out of the position. I wasn't thinking in a cool, calm, collected manner. I was just immediately bumping and pushing and everything else. I would typically get exhausted, and then I'm a sit and duck. Well, after getting really good at defending and doing all this stuff, I noticed how much more relaxed I was. They would sometimes get to side control or mount, and I would start building my frames to make sure they didn't get too high or get too good of a position. Iron squirrel to prevent them from getting chest to chest, that kind of stuff. And then it was this thing where I could intuitively find the right opportunities to escape. Just like we do in any other position, right? You're going into these spots and you get a feel for them and you know kind of when the right move or when the right time to go for something is because you get to the position a lot and you take your time to thoughtfully go about it. And so it was really powerful. And so for you guys, listen, if I'm talking to you and you resonated with any of that, right? You're panicking, you are hindered to go for sweeps and attacks from the top because you're worried that someone's going to get on top of you, whatever it is. If any of that stuff resonated with you, here's a challenge to you. Here's an idea for you. Next time you go into the gym, let someone pass your guard, let them get to mount. You don't have to announce it to them. You don't have to tell them, just let them do it. And then from there, don't even worry about escaping. Just see if you can shell up and keep your frames together, keep your arms together, prevent them from getting too tight, and just see what happens. Look up at the clock, see how long you can last, and see if you can last longer than you think you can. Because I would tell you that I do this situational drill sometimes with the gym where when we're working on escapes, I want students to know how powerful this idea is. And so I will take people and say, all right, top person, you try to submit the bottom person, just defend. Don't even try to escape. Just, if you need to bump them up a little bit with your hips, if you have to drive on your legs and off balance them a little bit just to get your hands out of danger and back to a frame, that's fine, but don't even try to escape. And what's so cool is that at the end of those rounds, I'll do a couple of them, I'll ask the class, like, hey, raise your hand if you got submitted. And relatively few hands go up. Because it's amazing what happens when you really bring everything in and you give your 100% focus on just simple things like bringing your hands together or protecting your neck. Doesn't mean it's going to shield you from all submissions, but it does a good job of slowing them down or giving you a better fighting chance than you think. And so for you guys that are listening to this, again, let them pass your guard, let them get to side control, let them get to mount, and then work from there. Again, and if you're like I was, where you were a higher belt and you've sort of neglected your defense and your escapes, it's as good a time as any to practice that. Let people pass your guard, put you in bad positions, and work on that defense. And so that, again, that was something that was really helpful to me. So I'm sharing it with you guys, and hopefully that's useful to you. And I'll talk to you guys next time.